Hello to our current and future leaders. Thanks so much for joining us for this special YSEALI Town Hall. We are all eagerly anticipating the U.S. ASEAN Special Summit. And we know that the future of Southeast Asia and ASEAN member states is dependent on making investments in Southeast Asian youth. That's why we wanted to gather with you. We know you are passionate about policy, awareness, making a difference. And so we have a bunch of special guests for you, two from the State Department who are eager to talk to you. We have Elizabeth Allen, Senior Official and Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs. And we also have Richard Buangan, Acting Assistant Secretary for the Bureau of Global Public Affairs. But let's go straight to our Senior Official and Undersecretary. Welcome, Miss Allen.
Thank you so much, Jason, and hi, everybody. I'm so thrilled to be with everybody today. It is a pleasure to be meeting with folks across the region. We are so energized to be engaging with the YSEALI community. I will just start off with a point of personal privilege by saying that when I worked in the White House for President Obama many years ago, one of my very favorite personal memories was traveling to Vietnam with him and participating in a YSEALI Town Hall. And I've worked at the State Department and the White House throughout the years. I'm a huge believer of networks and programs and everything that you all are doing in your communities to be the future leaders. And so it's our pleasure to be here with you today as we look ahead to the ASEAN Special Summit next week. President Biden is very much looking forward to welcoming leaders of all of your nations and coming to Washington, D.C., celebrating the 45th anniversary of ASEAN. We know that the U.S. ASEAN partnership is critical for peace, prosperity, and security in the Indo-Pacific. And what we know in particular at the State Department and in the team that I run, which is public diplomacy and how we engage with people across the world, is that in order for our relationships to be meaningful between our countries, it can't just be relationships between our governments. It has to be relationships through our people. And that's why we're so excited to be talking with you all today. So with that, I will turn it over to Richard.
Hello, everybody. Good morning from where I am in California, and good afternoon and good evening to many of you in other parts of the world. It is a great privilege and honor for me to join you all at such an important, momentous occasion. You know, YSEALI is really one of our most important foundational relationships in the Indo-Pacific and beyond. And the most important part of that relationship is the people to people. So being able to engage with people like you, entrepreneurs, young leaders, those who are making a difference in their community, it just makes the relationship more meaningful. So I really want to thank the organizers for doing this. It couldn't come at a better timing, as Liz mentioned, with the upcoming ASEAN Special Summit that President Biden is hosting. For him, it really shows the importance of maintaining relations with his counterparts, the other heads of state in the region that are coming to Washington, but also for us. The thing that we could do in tandem is to ensure that relationships that we have with people, including yourselves, is strengthened and explored in ways where we could help empower each other so we can be our best. And hopefully we'll use this time wisely, where we could talk about advocacy. We could talk about some of our thoughts that we're seeing here in Washington, D.C., about ways that we could better support you and ways that we could do a better job of hearing from you and how we can take a lot of those ideas and opinions you have and turn them into concrete action. So with that, I'm going to yield back the floor. I'm looking forward to your questions today.
Thanks so much to both of you. And now I'm going to briefly introduce our three Southeast Asian guests before they ask their questions. So in the house, we have Darlin Nai, who is the Vice Chief of the Research Division at the Agricultural and Rural Development Bank under the Ministry of Economy and Finance, a junior researcher at Future Forum, and a part-time lecturer at the Department of International Studies of the Royal University of Phnom Penh. And Darlin has a keen interest in the digital economy and has been advocating within her government to close the digital divide. Next, we'll hear from Kia Zin, who is the founder of Call Me Today, the first Myanmar mental health helpline. And his team of counselors has provided telephone counseling to more than 2,000 people in Myanmar. And then finally, we will hear from Tu Tin, who is the first ever Vietnamese deaf person to receive the World Deaf Leadership Scholarship funded by Nippon Foundation. She's also the founder and director of Psychoeducation and Applied Research Center for the Deaf, known as PARD Vietnam, a deaf-led nonprofit organization focused on empowering deaf people, developing sign language, and advocating for equal participation of deaf people in society. Darlin, Kia, Tin, welcome to the YSEALI Town Hall, and thank you for taking the time to be with us here today. We're going to go first to Darlin Nai from Cambodia. Please ask your first question.
Thank you very much, Jason, for the warm introduction, and Jumrip Su as well as hello, everyone. This is Darlin from Cambodia, truly excited and thankful to be here today. And of course, very excited to be learning from our experts, especially in two main areas. So the first areas that I'd like to understand more from our experts is regarding the U.S. ASEAN Cooperation. I think you both mentioned already regarding the upcoming U.S. ASEAN Special Summit, in which President Biden and the ASEAN leaders will be meeting and discussing various means and ways to intensify the U.S. cooperation with ASEAN. And because the COVID-19 pandemic has definitely left us a huge scars in almost all of our sectors and even various aspects of our lives, I'm wondering what the U.S. is currently doing to cooperate with ASEAN in the area of public health. Thank you.
Darlin, I'll start, and thank you so much for your question. Before we get to COVID and the importance of public education for public health, I just want to pay tribute to you and to everyone else who has joined us. We know that you are leaders who are looking to make a difference in your communities and are dedicating yourselves to causes and values and issues bigger than yourselves. And as someone who has tried to make decisions in my own career guided by very similar values, I just want to say that it's an honor to be with all of you. And to the extent we can help you all think through how best to advocate for your issues and your communities throughout our time together, we're very eager to do so. And so let's talk about COVID. To your point, Darlin. First of all, I think one of the most notable things about U.S. ASEAN cooperation for COVID is that next week, President Biden is convening a summit in Washington, D.C., we mostly virtual, to address the COVID-19 pandemic and to convene countries to bring new commitments and new best practices to the table in terms of how we are getting people vaccinated and how we are ensuring that people can live lives of prosperity and security amidst this public health crisis. And most notably, the White House is co-hosting this summit with the leaders of regional associations across the world. So actually, Indonesia is actually a co-host of the summit with the United States, along with the lead countries of AFRICOM, CARICOM, and the G7. And I say that to say that I think convening power is something that the United States has really leveraged in terms of our COVID-19 pandemic. And it's something that all of you can take back to your communities, right? It's important for those with the means and abilities to lead. That's why the United States has donated over 530 million vaccine doses across the world to over 110 countries. It's why the United States has funded over $100 million in COVID-19 related funding into ASEAN. But funding is not enough. It takes that convening power and that collaboration to be able to bring everyone to the table and make sure that we are sharing what's working, sharing what's not working, and talking about how we can fill gaps and opportunities together. So we're really energized, frankly, to be co-hosting this COVID-19 summit next week alongside Indonesia and our other partners across the world. And what I can say is we actually are at a different point in this public health crisis than we have been over the last 2 years, because we actually have enough vaccine doses to reach our vaccine target levels across the world that leaders had set over a year ago. And right now, what we're looking to do, as many of you well know in your communities, is capture that last mile, as we say, of vaccine barriers to be able to make those vaccine doses into vaccinations and get those shots into arms. And so to your question about public education efforts right now, so much of what we're doing is moving away from the need to call for manufacturing of vaccines and instead moving towards educating people about how to get vaccinated while resourcing communities to be able to get those shots into arms, like I mentioned. That means surging public health resources. It means, creating infrastructure for supply chains and refrigeration and mobile vaccine clinics. But perhaps most important of all, and this is where all of you come in, we are working to overcome vaccine hesitancy and vaccine complacency issues, because we all know that misinformation runs rampant, or in areas of particular poor digital infrastructure, people may not just be educated about what the vaccines are doing and frankly, how to get them. And so much of the work that our countries are doing together, that we can do together, and that you all can plug into, is helping educate people about how to get vaccinated. And that means using some of our data-driven messaging, making sure that we're getting into places where people can actually receive information, and that we're leveraging credible third-party voices, not just government voices, to educate people about those issues, some of which I know we'll get into, I think, later on in this town hall. But those were just some thoughts off the top.
That's really, really meaningful, and thank you, Liz, for your answers. Then I'd like to point to the next question, which is related to advocacies. I think that's truly expectable since both of you are very known experts in the field. Of course, I like to think that we are currently living in what we call an attention economy, where there's movements, topics, companies, organizations that are competing for the individual's attention. So in this sort of environment, what can we do as someone who work in the field of advocacy or from the community? What can we do to better communicate our vision and mission to the general public to attract buy-ins, especially when our solution and issue that we are currently working to address are quite complex? Thank you.
Sure, I'll take that. Thank you very much, Darlin, for that terrific question. And I just think it really summarizes best really the purpose of cultivating relationships with YSEALI and how important it is to invest in these relationships. One of the greatest things I think about public diplomacy and the jobs that Liz and I and Jason and other public diplomacy professionals do around the world is that we just don't think enough. It's not enough to communicate policy or just through talking points or statements, right? Public diplomacy is about, one, practicing what we preach, even if it means speaking about our own lessons, our own shortcomings, things that we've learned along the way. And two, creating the right environment. So communication is two-way. It's about conversation. And public diplomacy is about empowering and showing that we can have these conversations, but also find ways to operationalize. And through advocacy, through shared purpose, we can find ways to take the things that we've learned, take those ideas, and take the tools that we've learned as well, and spur action. I think the best way to learn about how to inspire and motivate others to share your mission is to really understand, first and foremost, the power of public narrative. And I think this is where a lot of us in the United States and elsewhere around the world are really learning about how people can can advocate and spur action. And I would recommend you all look up a person by the name of Marshall Gantz, G-A-N-Z. He's a lecturer at Harvard, and he lectures on social movement and the power of public narrative to inspire people, so that way they share in that action and they share in that sense of urgency, right? He breaks up public narrative in 3 parts: the story of self, the story of us, and the story of now, where we're talking about ourselves and why we're here and why we matter and why we are privileged to take the stage to talk about that issue that's important to us, right? And then talking about the story of us. How does that relate to everyone that's listening? How does that relate to everybody who is in the room, but also beyond? And why is it important for all of us to care about that one single mission or issue? And then third and finally, this is the most important, is the story of now. That's the call to action, and why it's important to understand that now that we talk about an issue, now that we talk about a problem, and now we talk about why it relates and why do we have to care about it, what can we do now, and why do we have to urgently act at this moment? So he talks about how through those 3 elements, the power of public narrative creates ways for people who are listening to us to understand, okay, I hear you, I see you, and I want to be in that same space where I'm calling myself to action. That's the power of public narrative. That's the power of advocacy. It's like I said, it's not enough for us to just communicate via talking points. We have to be able to inspire and motivate others so that way they share in our sense of mission. It's also, I think, important here in this sense, as you all are going out and talking to your colleagues and friends and teachers and family, community members, to really understand who the who is, right? Who the audience that you're talking to. And at least in the U.S. embassies and consulates around the world, we really try to do a lot to invest in relationships with youth, entrepreneurs, those of who have been disadvantaged, right? Because it's really about giving them the tools to succeed, and the ways where they could thrive and prosper in their own communities, whether it's politically, economically, socially, you name it. So learn how to really understand how the power of narrative works, how the power of targeting the audience that you're trying to reach, trying to understand them. And then, of course, work on your persuasion tools, right? I mean, it's different everywhere, depending on the values, depending on the stories, the personal stories, the things that motivate us. I know here in the United States, there are, a lot of ways that interest American people, culture, pop culture, music, really the personal stories of politicians, those who inspire us. That really spurs us to do things and get involved. Find out what it is in your communities that really strengthen persuasion. Once you've identified the target audience, once you've done your research, then figure out the messages that resonate, and test them out on your friends, on your family, on people who are critical about the work that you're doing. That's also important too. Conversation doesn't have to be about people who agree with you. It's also about having conversations with people who disagree. And we do a lot of that at the U.S. embassies as well. Keep it simple. It's important to have data, but also be aware of what the big picture is, and keep your stories positive in a way that humanizes and gets people to relate about the problem. Hopefully that helps.
And Darlene, I'll just pick up on something very quickly that Richard talked about early on, which is the importance of two-way communication. And I would say one thing we think a lot about, particularly at the State Department, but really in terms of any communications campaign or advocacy campaign, is the importance of that give and take in that conversation. And I would say very often we are all thinking about how to have a campaign and put content onto social media. And we think about that as an output exercise, right? What are we posting? And that's important, but it's also important not to miss what the reaction to those postings are and what kind of two-way conversation our communication strategy is inspiring. And so what I would say is we spend a lot of time, to Richard's point about data, assessing audience sentiment on social media platforms and frankly, soliciting feedback and soliciting input from social media platforms. And so many of you are doing this very well. I would just offer that as we think about communications, rather than thinking about it as an output exercise where we're putting things into the world, into audiences, it's really important to be able to intake back from those audiences to inform your communications campaigns and your advocacy goals as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think I'll hand the floor back to Jason now. Thank you, you too.
Thank you, Darlene. Although I'm sure as Darlene was listening to all that good advice, she was thinking of 5 additional questions of all the many, many policy goals that our YSEALI members have. But we do have to move along to our next guest, who is Kia Zin, who I actually know well. Speaking of conversations, we had a very lengthy and wonderful conversation about all his efforts in Burma. So let's give the floor now to Kia for your questions.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. First of all, please excuse us the very dark background because we have limited electricity in Myanmar and we have only 4 hours electricity a day. So also thanks for Myanmar folks to joining with me. We are in the same boat as well. So my very first burning question is that the 1 year has passed and the military seized power in Myanmar on February 1st, 2021. So what additional action can the United States and ASEAN take?
Hi, Kiazin. Thank you so much for that question. You know, it's been over a year since the coup in Burma, and from where we've seen, the crisis has only continued to worsen, creating instability across the region. You know, it's clear that the people of Burma continue to show that they do not want to spend another day under a military dictatorship. And we in the U.S. government, particularly with our colleagues at our embassy in Burma, continue to support them and everything that they are doing to find a peaceful way to restore Burma's path to democracy. Since the coup, I'd add that we've condemned the military dictatorship's actions. We've continued to engage our diplomatic partners and allies in the region and across the world who are looking at Burma with the same level of attention as us, and we continue to say the same message: to release those who are unjustly detained, to urge the military regime to reverse course, to release those democratic political leaders, journalists, civil society advocates, and foreign citizens, to allow unhindered humanitarian access, and as well as to engage in meaningful dialogue that simply acknowledges the will of the people of Burma. And it's not just the will of a handful of military leaders and those who benefit financially from them. We welcome and applaud ASEAN's efforts to address the crisis in Burma. We support its decision on Burma's representation at recent ASEAN summits, including ASEAN's decision to not invite the Burmese regime's foreign minister to the February 2022 ASEAN Foreign Ministers Retreat. And we continue to call on ASEAN members to continue to uphold Burma accountable to the 5-point consensus and to press the regime to allow the ASEAN Special Envoy to visit and engage with all stakeholders, including representatives of the pro-democracy movement. We, the United States, will continue to support efforts by all those working peacefully to restore Burma's path to democracy. And here, accountability for human rights abuses and for corruption is an essential foundation for building a democratic society characterized by the rule of law. And the United States also remains committed to leading the international effort to hold those responsible for the coup and abuses against civilians to account.
Richard, if I could just add to your point about holding Burmese leaders accountable and the military accountable, I think it's really important for everyone on this town hall to know that in March, the United States declared what has happened in Burma a genocide officially. And there are very important legal distinctions about our being able to do that, and hopefully leading, global coalitions in holding, those responsible accountable. I will say our boss, Secretary of State Tony Blinken, actually went to the U.S. Holocaust Museum here in Washington, D.C., which is meant to commemorate not just what happened in the Holocaust, but also to commemorate and to highlight and to hold people accountable, those that are committing atrocities and crimes against humanities across the world. And so it really felt to us like an important moment for him to both declare the genocide in Burma and also call on leaders in the region and around the world to continue to hold regimes accountable.
Yeah. Thank you for your support and everything, every contribution to Myanmar people as well. My second question is, what would be the ideal strategy for the place where there is limited internet access and poor digital literacy?
Yeah, I love this question. And thank you so much for asking it, because we well know that when we're talking about identifying those audiences, as Richard mentioned, we know that every audience isn't created equal, right? For all kinds of obvious reasons. And access to digital infrastructure and degrees of digital literacy are a really important component when we are thinking about how to talk about audiences. And so while it's always important to think about what are we saying and who is saying it and who are we saying it to, it's critically important to think about where we're saying it, right? And so knowing that digital infrastructure is a challenge in many communities, we know that thinking about traditional means of communication, particularly radio, actually, is really important. And so having a social media campaign and digital parts of your campaigns, your advocacy campaigns, your community leadership is really important. It's also really important to know when sometimes a traditional TV broadcast or a traditional radio broadcast is going to be more effective, or frankly, even pulling back from technology further, when flyers or leaflets or pamphlets is going to make sense, when it's going to make sense to, do a billboard campaign or a yard sign campaign and use sometimes very traditional techniques, not just digital techniques, to get into audiences. I think this is also a really important place to mention that credible voices piece, as Richard and I have talked about, right? We know that third-party trusted voices are really critical in carrying messages and conveying information into communities. So whether that's health professionals, academic leaders, church and religious officials, enlisting your fellow community members in any kind of advocacy or communications campaign that you're thinking about doing is a really critical component. And then again, you can think about on what platform to deploy them. I would just say, one final component and thought to leave you all with in this space is, when we talk about radio and TV in particular, it's not just going on the shows or asking for interviews. It's also cultivating relationships with those news anchors or disc jockeys on the radio. And again, trying to bring them along with what you're trying to do, what you're trying to educate audiences with for. We often find that we have success in, getting our officials onto media or having media help us convey information when we bring them under the tent, like we like to say, right? So we spend a lot of time off the record, with certain media figures and producers. We know that in a lot of communities, those distinctions aren't always honored on the record, off the record. But in cases where you feel like you can form trusted relationships with people in the media, all kinds of media, typically that relationship building, that time you're spending doing that pays dividends in the long run when they're eager to work with you to make sure that you can get your message out.
Yeah. Is there anything Mr. Richard would like to add on, or?
No, totally agree with Liz's points. It's important just to know your audience, and in challenging environments where it's hard to communicate. Sometimes the most simple and effective means to communicate is, just person to person, right? And word of mouth. And some of the things that we've seen when you're talking about issues that really matter to people, particularly at the community level, they spread faster than the internet can do it. So it's important to really know who the right people are in your communities, and who can help, like I was talking about earlier, share in that sense of urgency and that sense that can spread your message further.
Yeah. Thank you for answering all of them, all of my questions. That is really informative, and I hope everyone got a chance to learn the answer from two questions. Yeah. I yield the floor back to Jason. Yeah, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Kia. And I just want to say that the reason why we have such high-level officials with us tonight is because they really do want to hear from our young social policy advocates like yourself. We are listening to Burmese advocates, everyone at the highest levels of the U.S. government, the State Department, the local U.S. missions. We applaud you for all the efforts that you're making. So please, we are paying attention to what you're doing. So, and with that, I'm going to switch to our third policy advocate. This time we move to Vietnam, to Tien Nguyen. And Tien, we know each other well. We also have had a very long conversation about all the wonderful work that you're doing. You are such a passionate advocate to make sure that all Vietnamese and all Southeast Asians have access to a quality education and a full participation in their society. So let's go to Thien for your questions.
Hello, everyone. And thank you for inviting me to be part of the YSEALI Town Hall. To introduce myself, my name is Thien, and I am a deaf person from Vietnam. I am the founder and director of PART Vietnam, and we are working towards a barrier-free society for deaf people. So we're doing a lot of work in empowering deaf people and providing access for deaf people to have full participation in the society. So we also one of the grantee in 2020, YSEALI Sits for the Future, with the project Future Deaf Teacher. So we empower potential deaf teachers with deaf identity and also sign language teaching skills so that they can promote sign language to other people in the society and be the teacher to teach sign language to other people. And yeah, very interesting to join the conversation today. And I also have questions for Liz and Richard. So my first question is that the United States had excellent education model and also strong education partnerships. So what are the United States and ASEAN doing to ensure that a shared prosperity and also social progress and promote education in ASEAN countries?
Sure. So I'll start. And it's such a pleasure to see you and to meet you. I will say that your story is really inspiring. I'm not sure if our audience knows, but the largest and oldest deaf university in the United States is actually right here in Washington, D.C., and we live very nearby. And so deaf culture in the United States is particularly pronounced, and we're really proud of being part of the deaf culture and deaf community here in DC. Similarly, because of that, Starbucks actually had their very first all deaf staff coffee shop here in Washington, where everybody, whether you're hearing or deaf, you communicate in ASL or by means which the deaf staff can serve. And so we're really proud of that. And we know we have a lot of work to do with disability inclusion here in the United States and overseas, and just want to really pay tribute to the work you're doing in your community to make your communities more inclusive as well. And that's where education comes in. To your point, we know that education, as Dr. Jill Biden, our First Lady, likes to say, education doesn't just make you smarter; it makes you whole. And I think it's important to say that education can take many forms. Right? Here at the State Department, the work that Richard and I do in public diplomacy very often includes an education component. And that can mean giving funding to programs and to universities, to schools, to community centers across the world to conduct training and to conduct programming. It often means programs just like this, YSEALI, right? We have, like YSEALI, we have a program called YALI, Young African Leaders Initiative. And so standing up these networks of education that, you know, are providing opportunity for people to educate each other and to learn themselves is critically important. And we're doing a lot of that. We call them exchange programs, people-to-people programs. That's a critical, fundamental part of the work we're doing here. And I would just call out a couple examples to your good question about how the United States and ASEAN are working together. And actually, in your home country of Vietnam, we have some really, really powerful examples. Fulbright University Vietnam is actually the first independent nonprofit educational institution in Vietnam. And the United States was able to stand that up in 2015 with the cooperation of the Vietnamese government. And many of you in Vietnam, I'm sure, have touched Fulbright University Vietnam in some way. We've also been really proud to stand up the YSEALI Academy at Fulbright University Vietnam and to create a place where, you know, the YSEALI community can leverage and can go. And we're looking to continue to expand those networks, those places of opportunity to give all of you resources. We're also really excited that through our Fulbright program, we have a U.S. ASEAN Fulbright opportunity for YSEALI leaders and young people in ASEAN countries to come to the United States, actually, for 3 or 4 months to conduct research programs here at various institutions. So just to say, we're thinking about this both as how do we fund and create and announce opportunities in the ASEAN region? How do we bring people from the United States to ASEAN countries? And how do we bring people from ASEAN countries back to the United States? It's critically important, we think, to be tackling it from every one of those angles, because ultimately, at the end of the day, our belief is that education through people-to-people exchanges and experiences is really what we should be focusing on. You can't beat that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for this information. And I will come to my second question. So how do we ensure to have a successful campaign and cover a diverse range of audiences, including sex, race, ethnic backgrounds, and also abilities?
Yeah, thank you very much, Tien, for that fantastic question. And just let me echo Liz's admiration of your efforts and the things that you're doing in your community to really highlight the issue and just the advancement of deaf communities in around the world, particularly in Vietnam, and just the way that they've been also participating as community activists and being leaders in their own country. That's a really important question that you ask. And, you know, here in the United States and in the US government, we really put an emphasis on ensuring that diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion are really part of everything that we do and say, policy-wise, messaging-wise. So it's really important to really take those to heart wherever we speak, because it really is about being able to one, speak from the heart about who we are, and we are a diverse community, but also being able to practice what we preach, as I was saying earlier. We aren't sending our message out to one particular group of people. We want to reach a diverse range of audiences and those who share in our attention of the issues and the problems that we all face here and around the world. And I think the sort of main message here in answering your question is, as Liz and I have been talking earlier about, is just to really understand who your audience is. And that happens in many ways. One is doing your research. Two is just really knowing who are the right people in your community to talk to. It's important to be well networked, to know how to communicate messages in various ways, whether it's through internet, through mass media, the newspaper, television, radio, or by word of mouth. which, as we were saying earlier, is also just as important. And it's also really important to understand, as you are looking at how you're communicating with various communities and audiences, is how to say the message that you want to convey through different means, possibly maybe highlighting different stories. Maybe there might be certain sort of sayings that might motivate certain audiences based more than others. It really is the sort of research here that you all should be doing to really understand who your audience is and ways that you can inspire and motivate them. We often talk about in public diplomacy, when designing a communication strategy, to really think about the 3 M's: message, medium, and messenger. I'd also add there are to the 3 A's, right? Authority, right? Because we're experts in what we talk about. Accuracy, because we always tell the truth and we want to make sure that we put out the most up-to-date information. And most important, and I think Liz and I can really, share in how we've seen this evolve in public diplomacy, is authenticity. Being able to speak from the heart and speak in your own voice. And I think that is really what inspires and motivates people, more than just being a spokesperson for an issue that you're possibly getting hired or paid for or recruited to do. If you really feel passionate about the issues and you're talking about it from the heart, that will do more to inspire people than reading from a piece of paper. So it's really important to take those sort of 6 elements, those 3 M's and those 3 A's, to heart. And as you are going about talking about issues that really matter in your communities, talking about these issues in the YSEALI network, find ways to really to share those stories and share ways where you can have best practices, right? We always talk about when you deliver a message or when you finish a campaign, you afterwards you assess how effective it was. You could do that through looking at the data, how well your message played, if your campaign was running in a newspaper or TV or radio. Find ways to look into the audience reach of that medium. Social media, Twitter and Facebook and other social media platforms have a lot of sort of analytics on the back end that really enlighten us on how well our message is resonating. So learn to understand how those tools work. And it's also the most important thing to do is, once you deliver a campaign, you can't just rest on your laurels and say we've delivered the message. It's also important to look back and say, how did we do? What can we do better? So those are the things that I think are key to ensuring that we're reaching a diverse range of audiences, that we are communicating effectively with impact and with purpose, and that we were really understanding that as we're talking to different audiences, that we're communicating in the right ways.
Thank you so much, Liz and Richard, for your answers, and I learned a lot from this. Thank you so much, and I give the floor back to Jason.
Thank you so much. And while listening to all this great advice and insights, I think about what we say all the time for YSEALI. It is so important to have quality mentors. And I took so much in. I had so many more questions I'd love to ask, and I'm sure the audience and our guests would love to follow up. But unfortunately, we're running out of time. So I'm going to say some final thanks to our guests, but just for our audience, please stick around. We have a special U.S. ASEAN trivia game coming up afterwards, and prizes are available. But I just want to say a special thanks to our 2 guests from the State Department. Thank you so much for joining us. And again, amazing insight, wonderful advice. I'm going to take in a bunch of those tips, and I know our audience, all of our audience members are as well. And I want to say a big thank you to our Southeast Asian guests. Wonderful questions, and also we know the difficult environments in which you work and how challenging it can be in Southeast Asia to advocate for changes in policy. So we want to continue to support you and have conversations like we've had tonight. We want to have a partnership, a dialogue, and continue investing in you. And with that, I'm going to go back to our State Department guests if you have any final thoughts for our audience.
I'll just say two things. One is, I'm so glad, Jason, you just raised what you did, because I think we wanted to close by really honoring the work that you all are doing, right? We know that many of you are trying to do your work and to lead your communities and to make a difference under oftentimes very challenging circumstances, whether that's, fear of censorship or very poor infrastructure. So we really just admire and honor the work you do. We consider ourselves your partners in doing so. As Jason said, we are here to continue to be helpful resources, and that can take many different forms. We look forward to that. But really, it was just a huge pleasure to join everybody today, and to mark the 45th anniversary of ASEAN in this way really means a lot to us, because again, it's these people-to-people experiences that we hope are going to carry us all forward. And as a very last point, I would say I'm planning a trip to Southeast Asia at the end of June, early July. And so I really hope to meet some of you on that trip. I can't wait to see you.
Yeah, 100% what Liz just said. For me, it's just so inspiring to speak to you all today. This conversation reminds me that this really is the best part of our jobs. Just being able to not just share information with you, but just hear from all of you and be inspired by your stories and the stories that you all are sharing to overcome adversity. And just to do great things because you care about your community, you care about your country. And really, that's what this is all about. And if there's one thing I hope that we can all take away from this conversation is that the ASEAN relationship, the U.S. ASEAN relationship, isn't just a relationship of countries and governments in the ASEAN community and in the United States. It really is a people-to-people relationship. And that's really what we're hoping YSEALI can be for us. It isn't just an official relationship, but one in which all of us benefit from each other, from the conversations that we have, and can find ways to improve our own communities in Southeast Asia, in the ASEAN community, but even here in the United States. Millions and millions of Southeast Asians who live here and work and have immigrated, including my own family, have really depended on the cultural ties between our two regions to really grow our economies, strengthen our societies, and conversations like what we're having here in YSEALI are important. So thank you for everything that you're doing. Keep up the good work, and we're really looking forward to seeing your bright futures as you're doing great things in your countries.
Thank you so much. I know you have to go. Just one parting comment. You're getting a lot of love from our audience who are welcoming you in all the various languages of Southeast Asia. There are many. And just from all of us, thank you so much for participating and joining us tonight. All right, and we are going to be doing a trivia game. So thank you so much for sticking around to the end, because we're going to have some fun now. So everyone is going to need to use the platform called Kahoot, KAHOOT.IT. So in a moment, we're going to bring up a code. But while they're bringing up that code, I'm still reflecting. I'm so energized by all that great advice. So it's coming up soon. It's generating. All right. Okay, and the code is, so you need to bring up a separate URL, a separate website. It's www.kahoot, that's KAHOOT.IT, and it's going to ask you for a game pin. And that game pin is 918-5080. Again, the game pin is 918-5080. All right, we see some people joining. I should ask my staff if I can log in myself, but I know the answers, so I don't know if that's fair. But I want to get some of this great, these great prizes, this great swag that we're going to be giving out. All right. We're not going to rush it. We'll give everyone another minute to log in. Again, the game pin is 918-5080. And that website is KAHOOT.IT. We'll just wait. Give you another 30 seconds. All right. Okay, well, we're going to wait a few more seconds just because we see a lot more audience coming in. We'll give you another 30 seconds, and then we'll have to get the game going. It's great to see all this participation. It's fantastic. After the show and in the months ahead, we'd love to hear stories from you, how you use the advice that you heard tonight, the insights that you heard to design campaigns for the many, many, many important causes that you fight for. All right. We're just going to give you about 15 more seconds, and then we're going to have to go to the game. So one more time, KAHOOT.IT, Kahoot.it, and the game pin is 918-5080. All right, I was waiting. I wanted to give you all, as many people as possible, a chance to play, but we have our group. So let's move forward to our first question. Da, 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 da. Now remember, we've got some U.S. ASEAN relationship questions. Where is the headquarters of ASEAN? You want to try to answer as quickly as you can. Where is the headquarters of ASEAN? All right, and the answer is Jakarta. 11 people answered on time and got it right. Congratulations. So let's see who is in the lead. All right. And the lead is Puput Apriyani. And next is Lynn and one of our guest speakers tonight, Theen. Great. All right. Let's go to our next question. When was ASEAN established? When was ASEAN established? All right, 2 more seconds. All right, and the answer is 1967. We had answers. All the answers were filled in, but the correct answer was 1967. So let's see who's in the lead now. All right. Hey, it's changed a little bit. Lynn has taken the lead, followed by Feature and DL. All right. Let's go to the next question. Oh, darling, Lynn, which ASEAN member state is the largest country in Southeast Asia? Which ASEAN member state is the largest country in Southeast Asia? All right, and the correct answer is Indonesia, which most people got correct. A lot of people guessed Philippines. That's a good guess. I might have guessed that. All right, let's see where we are now. All right, and in the lead, we have Lynn, Feature, and DL. All right, let's see. The next question. Who is the ASEAN chair this year? Who is the ASEAN chair this year? All right, and the answer is Cambodia. Cambodia is the ASEAN chair this year. Does anyone know who the ASEAN chair will be next year? Indonesia. All right, let's go to let's see who's in the lead now. Still Lynn, and I hope I say your name correctly. Ike is coming second, and Theen is now in third. Okay, let's go to the next question. What is ASEAN's motto? It's a tough one. It's getting tougher. What is ASEAN's motto? And the correct answer is one vision, one identity, one community. And you could see we had a lot of answers all over the place. Let's see if that changed. Who's doing well on the board? And Ike has taken the lead. Congratulations, Ike. And DL has moved up. Lynn and Theen are still in the running, and Z in fifth. All right, next question. They're getting a little harder now. From which ASEAN member state did a journalist and social activist win the Nobel Peace Prize in 2021? Your options: Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, and Laos. PDR. We gave you a hint with a photo. All right, and most of you got it correct. It is the Philippines, Maria Ressa. We did that answer in honor of World Press Freedom Day, which was this week, May 3rd. All right, let's go to the next question. Oh, sorry. Ike, still in the lead. Let's go to the next question. Where did the U.S. ASEAN Special Leaders Summit in 2016 occur? Where did the U.S. ASEAN Special Leaders Summit in 2016 occur? California. Oh, a lot of people said DC. It actually was in California, but it will be in DC this year in 2022. Let's see how that affected the board. Well, Ike knew it, so Ike's still in the lead. Oh, we have a newcomer to the top. MYS, congratulations. All right, let's go to the next question. When will the U.S. ASEAN Special Summit 2022 convene? When will the U.S. ASEAN Special Summit 2022 convene? You know it's this month, so you know that. All right, most of you perfectly right. Good job. May 12th and 13th next week. All right, let's see how that affected the board. All right, Ike, you are doing well, and Dean has come back into the top 3, and DL is still doing well. Okay, let's go to our final question. This is our final question. How many ASEAN countries ranked in the Reporter Without Borders Top 100 Nations in the 2021 World Press Freedom Index? 0, 2, 4, or 8? All right. Again, questions all over the place, but the true answer, the real answer is 0. So let's hope that changes next year. Let's definitely work together and see if we can have that happen next year. So let's see. Coming in at number 3 is DL. Number 2, Dean. And number 1, Ake. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. But to our top 3 winners, you're going to get some special swag for YSEALI. So congratulations to all of you. And we hope that this inspires all of us to study a little bit more of our ASEAN history, our U.S. ASEAN relationship, which is so, so important. We're celebrating our 45th anniversary this year, and we hope we have another 45 years to come and more and more and more. Lots to do together. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us for the town hall. We're going to have to wrap it up. We hope you received lots of great insights and advice tonight. That was what we were hoping to accomplish, and we hope we did. We hope you share your insights, your thoughts, your comments. What should we do for the next town hall? We're open to hearing all of your thoughts. That's what the comments are for below. So again, thank you for joining us. I hope you had a great time. Until the next one, bye-bye.